What's up, everybody? Nick Wire back for the 10th inning here with another episode of This Day in Sports History. In yesterday's episode, we saw the first MVPs in both leagues in 1911 in the MLB when Ty Cobb won it for the American League. Frank Schulte won it in the National League. We don't have anything quite like that today, but we do have some more postseason baseball to talk about. We have some basketball to get into, and we have the debut of one of the most famous broadcasters in sports history. So if y'all enjoy this video, leave a like on it. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Let's get to it. This day in sports history. We will start out today in 1907 in the World Series as the Chicago Cubs would defeat the Detroit Tigers in Game 5 to win the World Series on a 2-0 Mordecai Three-Finger Brown shutout, which would technically give the Cubs a sweep in the series as the first game was tied, but they went on to win the next 4, and this would be their first of 3 World Series championships. We stay in the World Series in 1916, and the Boston Red Sox would defeat the Brooklyn Robins 4-1 in Game 5 of the World Series to win the series 4-1, claim their 4th of 9 World Series titles. 4 years later in 1920 in the World Series, in Game 7, the Cleveland Indians would defeat the Brooklyn Dodgers 3-0 to win the series 5-2, and this would be the Indians' first of 2 World Series titles. Stay off the World Series for a little bit. In 1948, Casey Stengel would officially take over as Yankees manager, one of the most famous managers in Yankees history. 1 year later in 1949, Vin Scully, working his first broadcast job ever, would do the play-by-play when Maryland would defeat Boston University at Fenway Park 14-13 in football. This assignment would mark the start of his 67-year career in the broadcast booth. Back to the World Series though, in 1967, the St. Louis Cardinals would defeat the Boston Red Sox 7-2 in Game 7 of the World Series to win the series 4-3 and win their 8th of 11 World Series titles. 1 year later in 1968, we would have the opening games of the Mexico City Olympics, the first Olympics to be held in Latin America, and Norma Sotelo would become the first woman to light the Olympic flame. 11 years later in the NBA, we have 2 events in 1979. We start out with the Boston Celtics, and the Boston Celtics guard Chris Ford would hit the first three-pointer in NBA history in a 114-106 victory against Houston. This would also be Larry Bird's first game in the NBA. And going from one first to another, over to the West Coast, we had the debut of Magic Johnson for the Los Angeles Lakers as the Lakers would defeat the Clippers 103-102. 10 years later, moved to the NFL, and Dallas running back Herschel Walker would be traded from the Cowboys to the Vikings for 5 players and 6 future draft picks, including 1 Emmitt Smith. Now we have 2 events to talk about in 2003. We will start in F1 when Michael Schumacher would finish 8th in the Japanese F1 Grand Prix, clinching his 4th F1 World Drivers' Championship and his 6th of 7 overall. Then in the FIFA Women's World Cup, Naya Kunzer would score the game winner in sudden death as Germany would defeat Sweden 2-1, and this would be Germany's first of 2 World Cup titles. We end today's video off in the NHL in 2016. Auston Matthews would become the first player to score 4 goals in his NHL debut as the Toronto Maple Leafs would actually end up losing to Ottawa 5-4 in overtime. So there you have it. That's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left anything out, I do apologize, but I'll see everybody tomorrow for Nick Wire and the 10th inning.